Friends, welcome to another episode of Making Disciples, and this is part 2 on prayer with Pete Greig. If you've not listened to part 1, I'd say hop back, listen to part 1, and then come and join us for this part 2. This part 2 for me is really important because it's where we start just talking through unanswered prayer, or this real reality of what do we do when God remains silent. So I'm really looking forward to you hearing this second part of the interview with Pete Greig. So would you jump in that very quickly? Just to say thank you so much for listening to the Making Disciples podcast. Really pleased that you keep coming back. Do keep sharing the episodes. Do let people know about it. I'd love to hear your comments, particularly on this episode. If you listen to this on one of the devices that lets you leave comments, we would love you to leave some comments, particularly on the Facebook group, Making Disciples Facebook group. If you're not on that, do join it and then leave a comment there. That would be wonderful. And friends, here we go. Making Disciples, an interview with Pete Greig on prayer, suffering, God on mute. Pete Greig, welcome to Making Disciples. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us this afternoon. Grant, I want to talk to you about the theology of suffering. And I'd love to hear
just a little thing then, Chris.
Just a little thing. I think, so we run the Alpha course, and it is the thing that we have so many, it comes up without almost a thought, but what do we do about suffering? If God is so loving, why is there suffering? Yeah. And it doesn't see, you can give answers and answers, but we always seem to get back to this same question that keeps reoccurring, and it's because it taps into something in each individual. But, I've read your book, God on Mute, and it is, I'm not saying this to you here, but it is the best book on suffering and prayer. And I love the whole section on Holy Saturday. And, the moment between the death and the resurrection, that we live in this Holy Saturday. And so I'd love to just talk a little bit around your understanding of God, suffering, unanswered prayer. What do we do with all of that in a way that we still come out of it loving Jesus, if not more so than we did before? Yeah.
Well, first of all, everybody suffers. And, of course, Christians aren't immune from that. And so we do have to get our heads around it. And, of course, it makes perfect sense that people say, well, if God's loving, God's kind, God's good, then why do so many terrible things happen? And I think there are some intellectual answers to that, but ultimately they don't hold a lot of water when you are actually suffering, when you're actually dealing with someone in profound turmoil. That's when it's a heart thing. The Holy Saturday thing is really just, if we trace the Easter journey of Jesus, you've got, first of all, Good Friday, this moment where we believe God suffered for us, with us. This is unique to Christianity, this unbelievably powerful idea that the creator of all things submitted to death on a cross, and he took the cancer, the suffering, the abuse of the world upon himself. And I find enormous comfort in that, Chris. In our own story, particularly with my wife's chronic illness, I've often asked for miracles and sometimes seen them, but more often what I found is God, instead of airlifting me out of a problem, parachutes in and joins me in the midst of it. And that's what Psalm 23 says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, for thou art with me. It's God with me in the MRI scanner, it's God with me in the cancer ward, God with me at the food bank. It's the presence of God who suffers with us. So that's the Good Friday bit. And it doesn't answer a lot of questions, actually. It asks a lot of questions, but it's pretty comforting. And then if we just jump from Friday to Sunday, we all most of us know that the Easter Sunday, message of, and then Jesus rises from the dead. He's alive today. He's overcome death. Where death is your sting, we can be forgiven. We can have a relationship with him. We're assured of eternal life. And all those beautiful things. But what Christians tend to miss is God allowed a whole day between Friday and Sunday, Holy Saturday, when the Bible pretty much goes silent. actually, in many traditional churches in the country, they strip the altars bare on that day. It's as if the church has nothing to say, because what do you do when God's dead, when God's in the grave? So God allowed all of creation to dwell without answers, without solutions, for a whole 24 hours. And it seems to me that many of us live our lives on Holy Saturday, somewhere between the immense suffering of Good Friday and the breakthrough hope of Easter Sunday, or between dear God and amen. You know, we live our lives. We can't question what God has done for us in the past, but we're longing for so much more in the future. And we have lots of questions. So I think many of us, our experience of faith is the paradox of uncertainty that is Holy Saturday. And I think we've got to be very careful before we try and leapfrog Holy Saturday and just rush from every suffering, every question, every problem to say, but the answer is Jesus rose from the dead, so everything's happily ever after. There is this living with tension, with pain. Romans 8 says all of creation is groaning, the sons of God to be revealed. So I think we all experience that. I guarantee every listener at this point is thinking, that sounds pretty familiar. And the thing I'd say is don't get tempted to dwell purely and exclusively on either Good Friday or Easter Sunday. You know, some people, when they're hurting, they go to Good Friday, they just say it's all bleak, it's all dark, it's all hopeless, where is God? And yet the truth is they also do see blessing and breakthrough and encouragement and goodness and beauty in their lives. It's silly to just deny that stuff just because you're hurting. If you're clinically depressed, you're going to find it very hard to see that stuff. But that's a clinical thing you're going to have to treat medically. And then other people, it's like they jump to the resurrection day and they say everything's wonderful, everything's happy, I never have any more problems. God's this kind of algorithm locked in Silicon Valley. If I just pray right, I'll see all the miracles. And I'm like, that's just not honest. Life is full of pain and chaos. So I think Holy Saturday enables us to reach into the reality of Good Friday and the reality of Easter Sunday and live with the paradox of real faith.
Yeah, I love that. So I was in Lebanon last year visiting church there, and one of the things that they did was on Holy Saturday, yes, they stripped the church, but they have this very simple liturgy where they open the doors, the lights are all turned off, you are invited to come and just sit in front of a cross, a very simple cross, and just to sit there and to take the weight of God is dead. And what they allow you to do is process also the grief of those that you've lost that year, that those individuals are dead. And what they have this very simple 2 hours where you can come in and go out and do that. But that means on Easter Day, when you come, there's a deeper, profound sense of the resurrection. Because there is a danger that if you leave on Good Friday with the death and you leave somber, you then rush around on Saturday and it's all very busy and you're getting ready for resurrection.
Yes, it's chocolate day,
Yeah, and you are all, it feels like you're rushing ahead to the desperate need for resurrection. Whereas I love it, and they open up the church and they allow people to come and to sit there and to say, all isn't well. And try to sense that feeling of what it must have been like for the disciples with the unknowingness. And I love that. I love that they practiced that. And,
it's beautiful.
It just has this deep, profound quiet.
To become a Christian, they never tell you this, is like, it's a bit like going to the post office. You're going to have to wait. Like to become a Christian is, you're going to have to get good at waiting, because, my friend Tim Hughes says, God only has two speeds, slowly and suddenly, and even when he does things suddenly, he takes his time. It's like, read the Bible. God is slow. We're recording this right now in November. I'm looking out my window. Creation is preparing for Holy Saturday. It's preparing for winter, when there won't be a lot of fruit, and we're just going to have to wait, and there's going to be a lot of darkness. But without a good, hard, cold, long winter, you don't get a good, bright spring. You don't get a good harvest. And so we have to learn to linger in the winter seasons. We have to learn to wait. But the assurance of Christian faith is that isn't hopeless. It's not despairing. It is waiting for the spring. It is waiting for Easter Day. We wait, as the Apostle Paul says, we do grieve, but we do not grieve as those who have no hope. And so my father, who's died, I miss him, but he never met my kids. But one day, I often think about the day when he and my kids meet and whether he'll recognize some family likeness there. And so I grieve, but I've got this little twinkle in my eye because I believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Oh, man. I almost feel I want to just pause there for a moment and let that sit. But I want to just ask you before we end what you sense Jesus is saying at the moment to you for the church. One of the things I know about you, Pete, is you're a prophet, and the Lord speaks to you, and I'd just love to hear what you sense the Lord is saying for this season.
Well, I mean, I don't think I'm a prophet. I try and listen to God and guess most of the time, and often get it wrong. But I am enormously excited. I see something stirring in the church in the UK that is quite extraordinary. As I say, the church is growing again. Many of the great Christian traditions are now church planting. Most of those church plants, like your own, Chris, are growing and working. People are coming to Christ more easily than they were 5 years ago. The statistics are now backing up what has been anecdotal for a little while. And, we're seeing literally millions gathering to pray. Yeah. So a time of austerity, I think, is also a time of enormous opportunity for the gospel. And, so I think what the Lord may be saying to us is get ready, get your house in order, consecrate yourself, set yourselves apart, get yourselves ready for what I'm about to do. And I believe the Lord is building a new circuit board of relationships in the nation that don't fit denominational traditional lines. In fact, it will probably subvert many of the denominational allegiances. And it is around those who love Jesus, who are confident in the gospel, who want everything God's got for them, including the gifts of the Holy Spirit, and ultimately believe that the very heart of the Christian message is friendship with each other as fellow Christians, friendship with God, and friendship with people who don't yet know Jesus. And I think there is amazing unity. We're seeing it in regions and in cities and increasingly in the nation. And these things really excite me. So I think this is a time to be confident. And I would just say to anyone listening to this, learn to say yes to God. Whatever God tells you to do it. Because the most dangerous thing you'll ever do is say no to the God who knows you best, loves you best, and wants the best for you. Learn to say yes to the one who's on your side.
Yeah, Pete, thank you so much. Thank you so
much.
much.
My pleasure.
And I can't more highly recommend How to Pray. I think there seems to be 5 copies in our house. I think everybody who's old enough to read owns a copy, and I think everybody bought their own copy, not knowing everybody else bought one. That seems to be there.
Well, you're backing the trend that most people I talk to say, I've lent it to about 5 friends, and I sort of think, I wish someone else would buy one. So that's so kind of you. And people can get the video content of the book for free at prayercourse.org.
Hey, just tell us about that. So I know about the prayer course, but tell those listening about that, because it is, and you've just redone it. Yeah. And the first version was excellent, but actually the new version is superb. So just tell us about that before we go.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been the prayer course has been done by 1.7 million people so far. It takes you through the Lord's Prayer. You've got like a 15-minute video looking for each session. There's 8 sessions looking at everything from adoration and confession and unanswered prayer and spiritual warfare, things we've been talking about in this podcast. And then there's like a cheat sheet, so you can do a discussion or a Bible study around it. And what it will do is it'll help you get your head around the full menu of prayer and it's really helping churches, actually entire denominations, to raise the sea level, not just their understanding of prayer, but of their faith that God answers prayer. So that's just at www.prayercourse.org.
And it is a gift.
It's free. It's cost us a lot of money to make it, and we just give it away. That's what Jesus told us to do, to help people like you to pray. So we want to do that.
And it is excellent. We've done it in our small groups across the church twice over. We run it twice. And it is just really easy to kind of watch, listen, and then discuss. And we've just found it really helpful. So, Pete, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you, Pete. Know that you're very busy, and just love the fact that you've given us a bit of time this afternoon. So thank you very much. And lots of love and
thanks,
blessings
Chris.
from us. Grace and peace.
Thanks, mate.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. See you. Thank you.
Friends, I hope you found that interview with Pete helpful and inspiring. I just think it's really helpful thinking about prayer in terms of Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and then resurrection. And we do sit in this place of unanswered prayer very often. And the danger is, if we allow Good Friday to shape our prayer life, then we won't pray a great deal because we just think there's death and death and death. But we live in this place of the hope of the resurrection and the hope that there could be tomorrow breakthrough where we've yet to see breakthrough. So Holy Saturday is helpful because we can often feel like we're surrounded by death, but we want the hope that tomorrow may be different. And this idea really, for me, it's helpful because it's hopeful in that when we are surrounded by death, there may be something new about to birth tomorrow. I'd love to share with you just something from a German theologian called Jürgen Moltmann, and he was in a prisoner of war camp during the Second World War. And while he was in this prisoner of war camp, he found himself in Holy Saturday. They looked like there was no hope. They looked like nothing could change. He was reflecting on the resurrection, and he reflected on Holy Saturday, imagine, for Sunday. He was imagining what Sunday would look like for him if the resurrection would be to transform his situation. And he developed this line of thinking, this line of thought called the theology of hope. And what he realized was, because of the resurrection, we get to pray for a different future reality. And he recognized that when he prayed, it was like he was reaching through the cross to that new day where there'd be no more pain and no more suffering. And on the other side of the cross, there is this heaven on earth, heaven crashing with our reality. And that he recognized that although he was living in a place of death, he could pray through the cross and almost pull forward the future reality of what could be because of Jesus. So, for example, I may find myself in a position where I've just been diagnosed with some illness. And my prayer would be, God, I recognize my situation right now looks desolate. But because of the resurrection, I believe that there is healing and restoration. I believe there'll be one day where there is no sickness. So God, I want to reach through the resurrection today to that other side, and in prayer, pull future forward. God, I don't want to wait until I get to heaven to find healing. Lord, I don't want to wait until after death to find life. I want to have life in its fullness today. So God, I'm going to pray through the cross and pull the future reality forward so that I can live in the Jesus reality today. So that's what Jürgen Moltmann developed with it. It was this line of theology that said, in prayer, we get to pull the future reality of heaven on earth forward, and we get to hope that the resurrection could change things today for me. So what I'd love to do is encourage you. If you've been praying for a while for something and not seen breakthrough, and if you are desperate to see something change in your life or someone else's life, become a prayer of the theology of hope. Even though you find yourself on a Holy Saturday where things look impossible, pray, God, I believe in the resurrection. I pray it would come forward and meet me today in Holy Saturday. And I want to encourage you to do that because A, it's a good practice. B, it's about practicing resurrection in our prayer life, this resurrection of Jesus that we believe actually happened, praying it as a part of our prayer life. But it also gives us great opportunity for testimony of seeing what God could possibly do. So I really want to encourage you to give that a go. If you find yourself in Holy Saturday, pray with a theology of hope that the resurrection could transform where you are right now today. Friends, I hope you find that helpful. Do share this podcast with friends, family, people that you know that might find it helpful. But until next time, grace and peace.